Hi, welcome back to the CuSi Sound channel, and the second video in a short series I'm doing all about this little box which I've dubbed CuSi Drumz. Just as a bit of a recap, CuSi Drumz is basically an extension to Project 920, the modular analog synth I built for my son for Christmas. Well, it's coming up to his birthday, and he said, is it possible to build some extensions to that particular thing and get some percussion modules? And of course it's possible. So in the first video I gave an overview of what was in here. In this video I'm going to talk about the drum modules themselves in more detail. So there's the kick drum, the bass stroke smurf drum, a hi-hat and a snare. What I'll do, I'll talk about what the circuits are, I'll show you the stripboard layouts that I've used, and then I'll give you a very quick demo of what each of them sounds like. I'm not going to do them in a mix or anything like that or any processing. It'll just be the raw sound so you can hear what hopefully you will get if you build these circuits for yourself. So yeah, let's move in closer and have a look at how to put together a few drum modules. Here we are up close. So we start with the kick drum. The controls on the kick drum, we have pitch control, decay control, there's a trigger input, there's an output, and then I've included an LED so I can see what the trigger's doing. Quite useful on drum modules to actually just see what's coming in to the module on the trigger side of things, so you can keep a track of what's going where. The kick drum circuit in here is the same kick drum circuit that I put in my Project 12 synth. Only in Project 12 I use a plus and minus dual rail supply. In here it's running on a single 9-volt supply, which is what the original circuit design was for this particular one when I did a series on building the kick drum. Now, a few people had a go at that circuit, and one or two said that they got quite a bit of noise even when they weren't actually triggering anything. In the circuit instructions, one of the suggestions is to put an extra 100 nanofarad capacitor across the power rails to the op amp to help solve that. What I found was it seemed to be related to where I got the decay port set. And with a little bit of messing around and experimentation, I actually reduced the value of the decay port and the value of the pitch port, because I felt that the control range that I wanted was right at one end of the port's rotation. So I kind of dialed it back to give me a little bit more control. And in doing so, I've actually got rid of the background noise problem that I had. So if you've had that problem, well, there's a suggestion of somewhere else you might want to go. So a quick recap of what the stripboard layout looks like for this version of it. So this is what it looks like. And yeah, you can see that there's the values of the potentiometers there, which are much lower than the ones on the original circuit description. But it appears to work for me. So let's have a listen at what it actually sounds like. So what I've got here, this is the clock module, and I've got a simple clock output. Put that into the trigger input on the kick drum, and then from the kick drum I'm taking the output straight into my mixer so you can hear it on the recording, and there's no other processing. I've got no effects on the mixer or anything like that. I'll start the clock and you don't hear anything because I've not turned it up on the mixer. So there we go, that's the kick drum sound. As I say, we've got a pitch control, it's set quite low at the moment. set it somewhere midway, then we'll play with the delay. Not a lot happens right at the bottom of the box rotation, but as we bring it up, there's almost a kind of a feedback, and I think that's what was happening when I got even bigger values on this. It was difficult to get rid of that kind of, you can hear the buzzer there, but you can kind of tune it out altogether. And just to show that, stop the clock, there's no hum coming from the circuit anymore. So that appears to have solved that issue. So there you go, that's the kick drum, which I'm quite pleased with the results of that. Let's unplug that, and we'll move on to this one below here, which is the bass stroke smurf drum. And again, this is a circuit that I've used in Project 12, and the thing with this circuit is it's a passive circuit, so it doesn't matter what your power supply is because it works entirely on the signals that are fed into it. So it will work with pretty much any system. Quick run over the controls. We have this is a pitch control. Then we have a decay, which is a switch. You switch the decay in or out. I'll come to the middle switch in a moment. We've got the trigger input, the drum output, and again, I've put an LED on the trigger input. Now this middle switch, when you look at the circuit diagram for this drumish smurf drum thing, there's two ways of wiring up the pitch control. One is to wire it into the base of the transistor, and the other is to wire it into the emitter of the transistor. And I think if it's on the emitter, then you get a more pronounced kind of squelch sound to it. So the stripboard layout that I've put together for this one looks like this. See, there's no power supply rails to it, and you can see the switch there, which switches the controls around the legs of the transistor. So that gives him kind of a little bit more range than my original design, which is sat in Project 12. Okay, so that's how it's put together. What does this one sound like? He says crashing into the furniture. Okay, again, using the same clock trigger, and output. Both switches are in the up position, so the decay switch is kind of switched out, and the smurf switch is switched out. Start it going. It shouldn't hear anything because I think I've turned it down again. So there you go. That's kind of a bit of a raspy sound. You can hear it kind of pitch going down, pitch coming back up. Okay, stick it somewhere around about the middle. Flick the decay switch. You get more of a squelch. Flick that back out again. And this is now switching the transistor legs. More squeaky, more high pitched. And then switch the decay back in, so we've got everything in basically full now. And there we have yet another interesting sound. But there you go. I quite like this little circuit. It adds something a little different and a little more interesting into the percussive mix. So, yeah. I'm quite pleased with that. Right, okay, let's unplug those for now. Ooh, should have turned the mixer down. Sorry about that. And we'll move on and have a look at the excuse me, have a look at the hi-hat. Now, the hi-hat and the snare, they are both percussive noise circuits. And again, I've got the versions of these in Project 12, and they work really nicely in Project 12. The problem I had when I came to put them into this system, which is running on 9 volts, was that I was really struggling to get the transistor that generates the white noise to actually generate a decent white noise signal, so I could then shape it with the rest of the circuit. And I mean, the way it works on one of these is you generate white noise, and then you stick an envelope on the front which gives you your percussion attack, and then you stick a filter on the back which allows you to kind of shape the sound to what you want. So, as I say, one of the problems I had was that I was struggling to get the transistors I was using on the 12 volt system to give me a decent output on the 9 volt system. Now, I'm kind of cribbing in my notebook because I'm going to tell you what I actually did to solve this. Right, here we go. So I've had problems with getting transistors to oscillate on 9 volt systems before. One of the things I built was the triple Avalanche drone box, the Avalanche 3 in my Little Boxes series. But the transistor that I used in that will oscillate at relatively low voltages, and that's an SS9018. So what I did was, the white noise transistor in these circuits, I swapped it out for the SS9018. The other transistors I've kept the same, but you've got to be careful if you're going to do that, because the actual leg arrangement in the transistor is opposite to the other transistors. So if you pointed them all in the same direction, you will have connected the SS9018 the wrong way around. So, I mean, basically what you do, the emitter and base are connected, and then the collector is left free and open. It's not connected to anything, and that's how you get it to do the white noise. Anyway, enough rambling. The circuit with my altered transistor looks like this on the strip board. So you can see that the way that I've arranged things on there. Also, the difference between the hi-hat and the snare is down to the filtering, which is down to a couple of the capacitors. And so by changing the value of the capacitors, you can shape the sound of the kind of white noise percussion, the noise percussion. So you can actually you could play around with different capacitor values and see whether you can find something that you prefer to what I've got here. But for me, these give a reasonable hi-hat and snare type sound with the relevant capacitor values. So that's how I put this circuit together. I will say that one of the things I did do is I ran a 12 volt supply from basically the input to the power supply and plugged that in. Didn't make a great deal of difference, but it's something that you could try. In actual fact, just about all of these modules will run on either a 9 or 12 volt single rail supply. So yeah, it's worth it. You can try it if you want, see what happens, but I think as I've got it wired up at the moment, I'm still actually running it on 9 volt. So let's plug it in and we'll see what they sound like. So again, I'm going to put the clock trigger onto the trigger input, because we've got trigger input, we've got, make sure I've got turn down this time, we've got the, on this case, a cymbal output, it's a hi-hat. I've got an LED again to show me what the trigger's doing, and then we've got a decay control here. So I'll set it around about the middle, and we'll set it going, and then we'll turn up the wrong slide. No, there we go. The output from these modules is still pretty low compared to the other modules, so you tend to turn this one quite high and bite the other ones off in the mix. This is the mixer. We're talking about this mixer later on in the next video, but for now I'm just going straight out to my mix I use for recording. So there we go. That's the hi-hat sound. So you can take it right down to something that sounds like a kind of a closed hi-hat. And bring it out to something that's like a full open hi-hat type sound. That's the hi-hat. Let me just turn this down before I start unplugging things again. Let's have a listen to the snare. We can start kind of midway on the controls. Turn the mixer up. So what you should hear now is some of the top end of the white noise, which we could hear coming through on the hi-hat to give it the that you can do on the X-Spec. It has gone, so you've kind of, and you've got kind of more of a harder type. So that's kind of a fairly dry snare, or you get a really loose snare. Again, the output's fairly low, so you have to kind of balance all that out in the mix. But it is working as a reasonable snare drum. Well, I think it is anyway. Well, there you go. That's kick drum, bass smurf, hi-hat and snare. 4 useful drum modules that I think sound quite nice. Alright, that one sounds a bit quirky, but yeah, I still like it. I've shown you the stripboard layouts. I've provided a few links back to other videos that talk about the circuits in probably a little bit more detailed than this one. So yeah, if you fancy building yourself some drum modules that will work on a single rail system, then why not? Go on, have a go. Build your own.